This is Trend Following Radio, where great thinking comes alive. Nobel Prize winners, legendary traders, best-selling authors, and the pros that know what drive us irrational human beings. I am your host, Michael Covel. Not filtered, raw, honest. That's my passion. No big analysis today from me on Silicon Valley Bank. Like you, I've read the headlines, I've read the stories, I've seen the competing narratives, I've seen the Twitter fights. They can all go straight to hell. None of that information, none of it will help you to make a buy or sell decision. Now let's take a step back. We need a moral society. We need civility. We don't need bad actors everywhere. So that is one issue. The other issue is, how do you deal with it from a trading perspective, from an investing perspective? Do you, in hindsight, now go find all these voices on Twitter and try to make sense of these competing narratives? All these smart people beating the shit out of each other? Some of them good people, some of them obviously assholes. But what are you going to do with it all? You're not going to do anything with it. Maybe we'll never get to a, quote, moral society, a civil society. Maybe we're too far gone. And it's quite unnerving if you're thinking to yourself, damn it, I might not be able to even get my cash out of the bank, which is what I was thinking in the fall of 2008, by the way. Not the first time. Right now is not the first time where I've thought about, shit, can I get my cash? But you're not going to trade your way out of this listening to voices all over Twitter. You're going to do it through trend following. That is your solution. It's the only solution. And as they might say out there, buckle up, buttercup. Because if you're going to go down the path of trusting Twitter voices and CNBC voices and Bloomberg voices, etc., for the next month, year, or 2 years, you might be fucking dead broke. But if you go the trend following path, you got a chance at some hope, a chance at some profits, and a chance to protect your downside. So there's no reason today, as I reach back into my archives, to bore you with any more Silicon Valley Bank analysis. 2 episodes. 1, a gentleman who held the land speed record for a decade plus. Yes, that's taking his car on land as fast as humanly possible. The other, a 16-time drag racing champion. Yes, I have played these guys on my show before, but this is a perfect moment in time for something grounded, something real. 2 men passionately chasing it. Real people taking real risks, real challenges, and making it happen. Now, damn it, there's lessons here. There ain't no lessons in the Silicon Valley Bank bullshit. I hope you enjoy my 2 conversations today. Today on the podcast, I have Richard Noble. Richard likes to go very fast. In fact, this Scottish entrepreneur held the land speed record between 1983 and 1997. His current team is aiming to go over 1,000 miles an hour on the ground in a car. Awesome story, awesome entrepreneur, lots of passion. I just love these types of conversations.
Hello, is that Michael?
It is. Richard, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Michael. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Where are you?
I'm in Saigon today.
Oh, you're in Saigon. Lucky guy. It's supposed to be a lovely country. I've never been there.
It is. It is quite nice. The people are lovely.
Good.
It's good stuff. Hey, listen, I want to jump right in. You got a big anniversary coming up here, so to speak.
That's right. Yeah, 30th anniversary of the World Land Speed Record. Yeah.
Okay, so I have two. I have my first question, because there's just not many people on the planet that have the feeling of going on the ground over 600 miles an hour, and you've done it more than once.
That's right. I've been over 600 miles an hour 11 times. Andy Green's been over, he's been over 700 miles an hour, of course. So he's one up on me. So I'm still the second fastest on Earth. So how's that?
It's pretty good. My question from a novice standpoint, because I'm thinking of my exhilarations of speed, and they're very minor. Maybe on the highways outside of Vegas, going over 100. Maybe being on a small Gulfstream jet and getting to 45,000 feet very quick. That's about the extent of it. So right. What does it feel? Can you even begin to describe 600 plus miles an hour, over 1,000 kilometers per hour? Can you even begin to describe that to someone that has not sat in that seat where you sat?
Yeah. I think the important thing to understand is it's not an emotional experience. If you are looking for an emotional experience, if you're looking for a high, Michael, then basically you're the wrong man for the job. The whole idea is to try and make it as boring as you possibly can so that you can concentrate entirely on what you're doing. And so if I take you through a thrust to run, you'd start, say, at the north end of the Black Rock Desert. You've got a 13-mile track. You've got a track width, which is just 50 foot wide, and you've got to stay within that track. And you start the huge engine, the Rolls-Royce Avon 302. You start it up, and you hold the car on the brakes with your left foot. All these cars are left foot braked. So you hold it on the brakes with your left foot, and then you wait for the aeroplane, which is flying up and down the track. Because remember, it's a long track. You can only see to the horizon, which is 2.5 miles ahead. And the airplane is checking to make sure we haven't got anybody on the track. Once we know we're okay, we've got the signal to go, then you hold the car on the brakes with the left foot. You accelerate the engine with the right foot to 92% of maximum RPM. If you go to 93%, it'll go with the wheels locked. So that's not very clever. So hold it there, do your last minute checks. Once you're okay, brakes off with your left foot, slam accelerate with your right foot, and aim to get into the afterburner within 30 feet. The sooner you get into the afterburner, the better, because that gives you the big boost and the big power. You're running on aluminium wheels. You've got no tires, so directional stability is not good. So between 0 and about 300 miles an hour, the car squirrels all over the place, and you've got to work really hard to keep the front wheels in front of the back wheels and keep the whole show within the lane. Because if you leave that lane, you'll never get back into it again, so you have to abort the run. Then you reach the sort of transition speed, which is about 300 to 350 miles an hour, when the thrust to fins really start providing the directional stability, which is great. So once you've got that, then the car seems to settle down quite a lot. And 350 to 550 is boring. It's very much the same thing, except you're just going a lot faster. 550 starts to get really exciting, because around then you see the shock wave build up on the intake, just above the intake and the nose. A great white shock wave stands up there as the airflow locally goes supersonic. And at 615, you get the same thing over the wheel arches, because again, the airflow is going supersonic there. And at these speeds, it becomes really, very interesting, because I've been doing a long time. And so consequently, your mental processes speed right up. And so everything happens in very, very slow motion. You've got plenty of time. You can see every single detail on the track come up and go under the car at 650 miles an hour. It's a very relaxed process. You go through the measured mile, and that's when the fun really starts, because you've got to come back very, very gently on the throttle. You've got to cool the engine for 3 seconds, which seems like an eternity. And only then can you switch off the fuel to the engine and push the button on the steering wheel, which fires the brake parachutes. And as soon as that comes out, you've got 6G deceleration, massive deceleration. So you're losing speed at 130 odd miles an hour per second. And you get an extraordinary effect called a somatographic illusion, which upsets your inner ears and causes you to think as if you're driving straight down to the center of the earth. You've lost, at that point, you've more or less lost control of the car, but it doesn't matter, because you've got the parachute on the back acting like a very big sea anchor, so it's holding you straight. So then you're down to 400 miles an hour, and at 400 miles an hour, it seems so slow, you want to get out and walk alongside. And then finally you're down to 200 miles an hour, you bring the wheel brakes in, and bring it to a halt. And then you reach across and get your notebook out and you write down everything you can possibly remember. And then very shortly the team is alongside you, and then we're ready to either do a turnaround or to take the car back to its garage. So that's it, really, Michael.
So I'm hearing in you, though, there's a lot of, it's all process. You're not really thinking about the outcome. You are worried about every process that you know has to be undertaken in the correct method. And then hopefully the outcome will be a higher speed than maybe the last time, but it's all about process.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. I mean, if you're starting to get a high out of it, then you're the wrong person. You'll be a risk to the project. So it's a job of a minor test pilot, I think is probably the best way of describing it.
So I did see the headline, though, and I think you're famously quoted for this, that why did you do this? And you said, for Britain and for the hell of it. Now, I imagine there's a little bit more to the story than that.
No, the interesting thing was that we did this in the 1980s, and in the 1970s, Britain was in a terrible mess. The country was a complete mess. We weren't succeeding at anything. It was a disaster. And it was really nice to be able to do something for the country and sort of really lift people's spirits. And it got a really good reception. People were absolutely thrilled. And of course, the Brits have a long association with the world land speed record, really right through from the 1920s. And then in the 1960s, we built the wrong sort of car, and our good American friends took it away from us.
Let me jump into something. This is something I talk on my podcast a lot. It's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is the word entrepreneur. And I have a feeling that's near and dear to you, and probably just the fiber of you. So when did you get this entrepreneurial bug? How did you know you had it?
I don't know if it's a bug. Basically, what I got was a land speed record bug. Really, I was really interested in that really since I was the age of 6. And there comes a time in life, Michael, when you suddenly decide, well, you know, if it really means so much to you, you better go and do it. And then, of course, then it's a sheer battle to try and convince people that it's worth doing, and worth putting resources in, and to get thrust to the world land speed record. I mean, it took an awful long time. It took 6 years of hard work. Well, the whole program took 9 years, and the efforts of about 200 companies. So, it's an act of a desperate individual, I think, really.
Okay. I got to step back. 6 years old, desperate individual. Okay, this is a little bit of British sarcasm here. So, what did you know at 6 years old? Why did you know this speed record at 6?
Well, it's a funny thing. Basically, we're talking about 1952. It's just after the war. Britain is a really boring place. There's nothing very interesting going on for a young kid to get excited by. And my dad was in the army. And he was based up in Inverness in the north of Scotland. And one day he decided he'd take us for a drive. In those days, you went for a drive as entertainment. Today, you don't go for a drive for entertainment, but that's what you did in those days. And we drove around the north banks of Loch Ness, which is a really beautiful place. And we came to a place called Drumnadrochit, and there at the little pier was John Cobb's jet boat Crusader. And he was going for the world water speed record. And I saw this thing. And if you have a look at pictures on it on Google, you'll see that, it's the most fantastic looking boat. I saw this and I just thought, wow, that's really special. And then, I don't know, I suppose the bug bit, I started studying. I wasn't really interested in the water, but when I discovered there was a land speed record, which was a lot faster, I then became really interested. And so I spent my adult years really sort of studying this, buying all the books, reading whatever I could on it. And then eventually, of course, comes to a point where you've got to go and do it.
I think, it's inspirational. I mean, in a different sort of way, I've been an entrepreneur, but not at the high risk. I mean, it's risky in a way, but that I've done things, but not risky in a life-threatening way. So, yeah. But you probably don't view the risk that you've taken as life-threatening, do you really?
No, you're absolutely right. I think the thing that happens, the process is really very simple. What you do is you start an organization to do it because it's a team thing. It's not an individual thing. It's a team thing. You build up a fantastic relationship with the team, and your team operates on the basis that if they don't like what's happening, they can walk away from it and leave it. And so there's a tremendous team ethos to get the thing right, to have thought it all through, to have done the research, and to get to a point where you believe you've really got a very good chance of actually putting it off. And that's the crucial thing. So you're part of an organization that's moving forward. You've done a massive amount of research. You've done a lot of development. And eventually, the organization pops out the top with a world record, having developed both the driver and, of course, the car and the team.
So let me follow up on this idea of higher risk. And like I said, not necessarily just in land speed records, but the idea of higher risk in life and society today, where I think society in many ways, you see so many efforts to minimize risk. And to me, it seems like the other side of the coin, it's almost it's a very fertile ground. And so how did you come to this idea about high risk having these rewards and being a place that you want it to be in the high risk space, so to speak?
I think it becomes really very interesting because, well, first of all, in terms of sort of British society, I think, or British culture, we've lost the risk. We don't take risks anymore, and consequently, we don't go anywhere. And the converse of not taking risks is that we study history and we praise those who did take risks way back in history. So we're going through a sort of phase in Britain where we're praising all the old inventors and the people who fought in World War II and so on and so forth. Pretty soon we're going to run out of material for that part. But it's very, very interesting. So consequently, we don't take risk. And because we don't take risk, we don't advance at all. We need people like Steve Jobs, who, was just absolutely the outstanding entrepreneur of his decade, his time. It's very difficult to get people to work like that and understand that. And so with our organization, and for instance, in Bloodhound, we have 60 people working. We've got to develop a risk culture where people are quite happy to take risk and are encouraged to take risk. And it becomes very interesting. It takes people about 3 or 4 months to sort of change from being working in a hierarchical organization where they're told what to do to working into one of our organizations where they decide what they're going to do.
I've seen some comments that you've made talking about security and people's desire for comfort. And I think if you focus only on security and comfort, you maybe miss one of the most important things in life, which is passion. Waking up each day and saying, let's go take it on. And I mean, you're a great example of that.
You wake up every morning and say, how the hell are we going to get through today, Michael?
Yeah, but that's still a great feeling, right? I mean, who wants to wake up and just...
I tell you what is a great feeling is that when you start a day and you think, oh my God, how the hell are we going to get through this? We've got so many problems and so many difficulties. And then somewhere along the line, something magic happens. And one of these magic people says, yeah, we're going to join. We're going to be part of you. And that is a fantastic moment. So for all the months of crap and difficulty and hassle and time, just occasionally you meet these amazing people. And there is one person at Rolls-Royce who decided that Rolls-Royce was going to sponsor the project. And I went to this meeting and I was told everything was going to turn to ashes and, we had to open hell. And the man just hit the table with his fist and said, right, we're doing it, and committed the whole of Rolls-Royce, which is just brilliant. So just occasionally, you're very fortunate to meet these people.
Okay, but when you're in that room, and I know you've talked about this too, the idea of your passion requires capital. So what are some of the things that you've learned about motivating people to get them to come over to your perspective?
Right. Well, let's get that right. We don't have any capital, Michael. It's a big mistake. Capital means shareholders. Capital means banks, and that's where the problems start. Because if you're running a very high-risk program like, for instance, like Bloodhound or Thrust SSC or Thrust 2, the shareholders get very frightened because they've never really been in situations which we find ourselves in. And so you don't want shareholders. So basically, it's a revenue business, and you've simply got to make the money every month. It's as simple as that. And
there's never, I mean, I've seen this also in your writings too, the idea, I see it in America, I'm seeing actually quite a bit of the entrepreneurial zeal in Asia all this year, and you're mentioning it a little bit in Britain, the idea of giving up. And I know it's kind of retracking on some of the things that I've already brought up, but how can we, I mean, just in our simple little conversation here, what can I get you to trigger on that can get people to understand why you don't give up? Why do you not give up?
Well, let's give an example. We had a fascinating situation with the Thrust SSC car, which was eventually the first car to break the sound barrier. And we were building this car. We'd done all the research. We'd done all the research on the car. We'd done rocket testing. We were the first ever to use computational fluid dynamics to look at the aerodynamics. And basically, we then had a portfolio of documentation which showed that we could do it. It was going to be safe. And at that time, all the big companies in Britain were promoting themselves as being wonderful and brave and entrepreneurial and all the rest. So, I went around to see them all with all this, and they just ran away. They were absolutely terrified of it, which was really very sad because, of course, at that stage, we already held the world land speed record. We were probably the best to do this, and they weren't going to back us.
What did they say? Why were they terrified? What did they say, Richard?
Well, they saw the risk. They all they could view, all they could imagine was a terrible car crash and the last piece of bodywork having their logo on it. I think that's as far as it goes. So what do you do? Well, if you've got something that's as valuable as that, in other words, the research, you've just got to go and do it, haven't you? To hell with all the rest of them. You've just got to get on and do it. And somewhere along the line, providing you keep batting away, you'll find a few like-minded individuals. And gradually you'll build an organization that can do it. That's what it's done. But all the way down the line, great difficulties with the British culture, great difficulties with the big companies who wouldn't support it. And we still have that trouble too with Bloodhound.
It's funny. I had a chance to become friends with a gentleman who runs one of the largest hedge funds in Britain. And a guy named David Harding. And it was interesting when I'd have conversations with him, he kind of cited, and I'm not trying to be political here, but he cited some American work, specifically the novel Atlas Shrugged, and just talking about that kind of go for it entrepreneurial attitude. And he somewhat was very similar to you in expressing the culture of Britain and how he was able to kind of pull himself out of it, which I think was one of the secrets to his success as well.
I think there's got to be a lot of parallel there, Michael. It certainly has, because basically, also the culture extends to the media, and this was an extraordinary experience we had. Was that having done all the research on the car, and now here we're talking about the Thrust SSC car, so we're talking 1992, 93. The only way we can finance this is via sponsorship, and sponsorship requires, of course, a lot of media coverage. So you've got to get out and get the media coverage in order to generate the interest, in order to generate the money to build the car. So that's the sequence. Suddenly all our media coverage stopped. And I couldn't understand this. I mean, this is a fantastic situation. You're building the world's first supersonic car. You've got the real chance of pulling this thing off. And suddenly all your media coverage stops. So I got in the car and I raced around to see a whole lot of editors and anybody who'd see me and the BBC and all the rest. And the result of all these meetings was fascinating. They simply said, do you know, they said, it's too complicated for us. It's niche engineering. It's high technology. Our readers won't understand this, so therefore it's not for us. But they said, when the thing starts to run, when you start to run that car with all the noise and the flame and violence and everything else, we'll be there for you. But during the build, that's not for us. So consequently, our business plan was a complete mess. We didn't know what the hell to do. And we were saved by the Digital Corporation of America, who came around the corner and said, we're looking for show websites. This was 1992. And I said to them, what's a website? And they explained it. I thought, well, that's really interesting. It's a one-to-one communication. That's what we should do. We'll open a new front. We'll bypass conventional media. So we started putting a website together with the digital guys, and they were really interested and very, very helpful. And they started promoting it all over the world. And we didn't know what to do with this website, what to put on it. So we started getting the engineers and everybody in the team to write on the website and explain what was going on and what they were doing and how they were tackling their day-to-day problems. And so that was what we did. We got a series of blogs there. And then suddenly the website took off big time, started to grow at an enormous rate. And we could then do something that the BBC couldn't do at that stage, which was to go into the website and interrogate it and find out what they were all reading. And Michael, what they were reading was the technical pages. And this is absolutely amazing. So we said, right, well, let's give them as much technical stuff as we possibly can. So we gave them 800 pages of technology on the project. And the website grew to be the 5th largest in the world, bigger than all motorsport, football, all the rest. It's absolutely fascinating. And of course, your conventional media is 180 degrees out of phase. They're doing the wrong thing. Public absolutely love technology.
The public loves details, and I've seen this in my world too, explaining the nitty gritty of my world. But you're right, and I've had very parallel experiences with the web, and traditional media just wants to give these general headlines, assuming that the masses are essentially ignorant fools, or just have no interest or no knowledge or no desire. But then you go ahead.
You're so right. You're absolutely right. They dumb down in order to, and it's a dumb down culture, in order to hope to get the massive audience. But they're going the wrong way. But they don't risk it. They don't change.
But what's nice is about in your experience too, is you find you think, okay, I have this niche world as defined by major media. However, when your niche world is exposed to free distribution, i.e. the internet, all of a sudden you find that your niche is filled with some very powerful, passionate people.
Absolutely. And of course, an awful lot of people in the wrong jobs who've got real interests in other fields and so on, and want to share them. So it's a great privilege. It really is.
Well, let me as we wind down here, let me ask, where is everything right now? We're getting you. I know you want to break. You want your team to break 1,000 miles an hour. That's
where we are. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So where does it all stand? What deadlines are we looking at? Where does everything stand right now?
Well, it was an extraordinary story, the whole thing, and perhaps I better spend a few minutes on it, Michael, to explain. What actually happened was Andy Green had driven Thrust SSC, and I'd led the project, and together we'd broken the sound barrier, and we were very, very proud of that achievement. Interestingly, it got no response from the government in Britain. Andy got a medal of some sort, but there was nothing for the engineers or anything, which made me really sick, because it was a phenomenal team achievement. I mean, it really was. Anyhow, so then what happens is Steve Fossett, the late and very great Steve Fossett, decides he's going to go for the world land speed record. And he represents a real challenge to us because Steve, of course, he's no longer with us, but he had the money, the resource, the determination, motivation, the lot. He could do this. So Andy and I decided what we would do is, rather than wait and see what Steve would get up to, is to kind of head him off at the pass and create the ultimate car. So that's what we set out to do. We agreed with Ron Ayres, who's the aerodynamicist. Without Ron, we go nowhere. That the peak speed, or the record speed we'd head for, is 1,000 miles an hour, Mach 1.4. And of course, this was met with incredibility by the aerospace community in Britain. Because, I mean, this car goes 200 miles an hour faster than our best fighter at 3,000 feet. So we are actually going to be same position as the industry was in the 1920s, when actually the cars went faster than the airplanes. So that's all real interesting stuff. Anyhow, we had Andy fixed up a meeting with a minister in the Ministry of Defense responsible for all the purchasing. We had this great meeting, and our objective was to chat him up and separate him from a very modern jet engine called an EJ200. It didn't go very well, Michael, and it was a very friendly meeting, but when I asked the minister for the engine, there was a terrible silence. He didn't really see that coming. But what he did was he gave us an incredible lead. And he said, look, we have a real problem in the Ministry of Defense. We can't recruit engineers because there aren't any. We said, what? He said, yeah, there are no engineers. It seems that what had happened was that the media had sort of focused on the soft stuff for so long. In other words, that's basically the singing and the dancing and the cooking and all that stuff for so long that the kids had sort of lost sight of the really exciting bits of life. And the minister went on to say that during the Cold War era, basically everybody was producing these fantastic airplanes, and we produced, the Concorde and the Lightning and the Vulcan bomber and the TSR-2 and everything, fantastic products. And the kids would see them flying over because, of course, this was a wartime activity and all these things were out on sorties. And they were wildly inspired by what was going on. And that resulted in a steady supply of scientists and engineers. So the interesting thing here was the minister then said to us, tell you what, he said, what I want is an iconic project like yours run through every school in the country to create us a new generation of scientists and engineers. And so this seemed to me the only way we could make the minister happy. So I shook his hand and told him we'd do it. We then started studying all this, and we came across this fantastic graphic which shows the huge surge in conferring of PhDs in the US from 1962 to 72. It sort of grew by a factor of about 300%, massive growth. And that was almost certainly linked directly with the US manned space program, otherwise known, of course, as the Apollo effect. And so we decided we'd try and work along these lines. And it's been hugely successful, Michael. We now have 5,400 schools have written on it. We've got over probably about 2 million school kids studying it. So it's going to create a very large number of engineers. And in the US, you have exactly the same problems. And in a lot of countries around the world, the media have been doing the same thing, and thus not giving the kids any real sort of inspiration at all. It's all been this virtual fakery. Anyhow, so that's one side of it, and that meant, therefore, that our sponsors got CSR benefits, corporate and social responsibility benefits, which are very important to them. And we went through an enormous phase of research, which took 55 man-years, using 3 of the largest high-performance computing clusters in Europe, thanks to our good friends at Intel, who made all this possible. And now we're into the build of the car. And we're about halfway through. So if you went to the workshop now, you'd see it's beginning to look like a car. Very difficult program. We did get the jet engine in the end, thanks to Rolls-Royce. We've also had to develop our own rocket motor. So this is a huge program. It's all really coming together. We're going to have the car in Q2 2015. We've also cleared an entire desert in South Africa. So we've got a 12-mile run there, which is, I think, probably one of the best in the world. So all that's done. With our sponsor, our local South African sponsor, MTM, is putting up the huge 200-foot radio mast now. So we take the data from the car and connect it straight up into the internet. So around the world, all the schools can get all the data from the car each time it runs, and they can study it. So it's going to create an enormous number of scientists and engineers worldwide. At the moment, we're in 220 countries. The only countries we're not in, as far as I make out, are North Korea, which is what you might expect, and Vatican City. So that's a bit surprising, but there we go.
I love the idea that maybe some of the passion in engineering that has disappeared in the last couple decades that you're trying to bring back. You seemingly laid it right at the feet of boy bands.
Yeah, exactly right. Absolutely right. So
you're telling me that boy bands are not good for males that are looking to become engineers, even ladies that want to become engineers. Boy bands are just the downfall of society, perhaps.
Absolutely. I don't see the connection. Do you?
No. I think maybe if they could be eliminated, that'd be a good thing. Hey, listen, I want to let you wrap up here. What is it? Because for people, I know people are going to listen and they're going to want to kind of check out what you're doing, get involved, read, maybe even make some donations. So where is the best place where they can start the website, the main spot, Richard?
Yeah, the main spot is the website, www.bloodhuntssc.com. And there's an awful lot of material on there. We're also on Facebook and Twitter, etc. But the main thing is the website. And we're also starting a reciprocal website called Blast, which will in due course enable people to upload their own material and communicate with each other. So it's going to be a big international thing. We're going to be operational in 2015 when we want to go supersonic, and 2016 when we want to get to 1,000. That's the plan. It won't work out like that, but that's the plan.
Well, I think it's awesome. And I think for anybody out there that's wandering around saying, I can't do this, I can't do that, I don't know what to do. I think sometimes you just got to wake up and say, you said as a 6-year-old boy, a lot of people have dreams when they're little kids, and for whatever reason, they let go of them. Maybe society dumbs them down. Society scares them. But I think it's really nice for people to hear from someone like yourself to say, hey, all that stuff is nonsense. You've got to follow your passion. You got to follow your dreams. And if you don't, you could be one of those guys sitting on the couch at 70 years old going, what did I do during my life?
Yeah, absolutely, Michael. That's exactly it. Yeah.
Well, listen, hey, it was great having you on today. And I look forward to following your pursuit of the record.
Thank you, Michael. I really appreciate this. It was a great fun conversation, and thank you again.
My guest today is John Force. He is an American NHRA drag racer, the funny cars. 330 miles an hour, 530 kilometers per hour. That's how fast he's going. Less than 4 seconds, 10,000 horsepower. This is serious driving. John is considered the best. 16-time champion. His team, 18 times champion. He is one of the most dominant drag racers in the sport with over 144 career victories. Oh, did I mention? John is 68 years young and still pushing it. You want an example? You want a life story of making it happen? No excuses, entrepreneur on fire? John Force is your guy. I hope you enjoy this conversation because damn, I can only be so envious to possibly live one little bit of the excitement that John Force has had. John, as I go through your background, and we're going to dig a little deep today, but I want to know right off the top, big picture, why you? What is propelled you? What is the drive? All these decades later, you're at the top of the field. What is the drive, John? What's the secret? We can translate your secret to all different types of walks of life. What drives you?
Number one, we all want to make a living. We got to eat. You know, at the end of the day, I truly love doing what I do. I love NHRA drag racing. I have great sponsors. I love to drive my race cars. And at my age, I'm 68 years old. I can still drive. It's not like NASCAR. You know, the days are long, trust me, but you're not in the seat of that car for 3 hours straight. We got cars that run 330 miles an hour and less than, 4 seconds. But it's long days, engine building, taking care of the fans, doing promotions. It's a long day, but at the end, it's magic to me. I love driving these cars. NHRA Drag Racing's PT Barnum on the road, and we live on the road year round.
As a novice, as most of us are, I mean, there's very few people on this planet that are going to experience what you experience sitting at that starting line 4 seconds later, 330 miles an hour plus. Try and give the audience some perspective as you're sitting there at the starting line, because I've seen you say the races are won and lost right there at the starting line. What is going on? Give a piece of that feeling at the beginning, during the race, the thrill, the excitement. Try and give a picture, a story for what this might feel like.
Well, first of all, you're talking two cars racing side by side. We race in what they call the funny car ranks. Two of my daughters and my son-in-law race in the funny cars like myself, and I have a daughter that races top fuel. You're talking about a car that's 10,000 horsepower, runs nitromethane, has a 12-man crew that take care of it between rounds, tear it apart, put it back together, and then they give you this hot rod to go to the start line. Nitromethane belching out of the pipes. You know that it's a 3 to 4 second run. My family just ran, Robert and Courtney both ran 3:38, I think, last week, and 3:37 in Topeka. We're talking about going from a dead stop, more horsepower, one race car, 10,000 horsepower, than the whole front row. In fact, the whole field at NASCAR is more horsepower than all their cars put together. And then a driver has to react. He's wearing fire gear. He's strapped in. Races are won or lost on the reaction to a Christmas tree. That's why you got to keep yourself fit. I'm heading to the gym tonight. Keep yourself in good shape. Keep the mind responding, because your whole future's out there in front of you. And when you hit that throttle, all hell breaks loose. And that car can leave the starting line, shake it so bad it can knock you out. It can carry the front end for 300-400 feet. You know, it can set you on fire. You know that it can put you over the guardrail. I had a young kid that drove for me years ago that was killed in 05, 07. I crashed the same year. I was in the hospital for 6 weeks in rehab, just getting back where I could come back and win. And I've won 2 or 3 championships since then. Everything's out there, the pressure, the sweat, I've got a lot of experience. I know how to handle the pressure, and even sometimes it gets me. But it's really the joy of it, of the heat of battle being won with your race car. There can be a guy in the next lane you're racing. There can be a woman over there. A lot of women have evolved into our sport, not like NASCAR, where they have a few, or IndyCar, where they have a few. We have a lot of women over here in all the categories. So, and they do real good. They win races. My daughter Ashley was the first to ever win in a fuel funny car. And now, of course, Courtney's winning a ton of races. Pressure, stress, fear, all rolled into one. Yeah, but there's victory at the other end in that win light. You step on that gas and you ride her out. And the parachutes come in at the end of that racetrack. You know you're either alive, or if it catches on fire, you go into fight mode. You go into fight mode to hit the fire bottles, to get on the brakes, get the parachutes out, because the only friend you got at that time is yourself, and you're waiting for safety safari, NHRA, to come get you. They're the only ones at the end of the line that's left to pull you out of a burning car. I paint a picture of it negative, but you ask what you think about. You really think about cutting the light, winning the race, getting the car from A to B, through tire shake, wheel stand, whatever it takes to get there. But all that other stuff is out there, because we always joke, not because I'm sponsored by Monster Energy, my daughter's car. I'm sponsored by Peak Motor Oil and Roberts with Auto Club, and Courtney's with Advanced Auto Parts, and we're always Chevrolet. But Matt Toole, all these sponsors that pay PPG, they want you to win at the end of the day. So that is your priority. But in the end, you got to be, in case that monster jumps up in the front seat with you. And I don't mean the drink you drink. I'm talking about a fireball or an explosion or whatever takes place. Or the two race cars run into each other. That's even happened.
You know, John, as I listen to you talk, you know, there's a certain, I think for most Americans listening, there's a certain cowboy attitude. But when it comes to the race, the preparation, the checklist, John Force has a system, and you follow that system like crazy, don't you?
Well, you live by it. I mean, you know, we've lost some drivers out here over the years. It's going to happen. You get run over by a trash truck. They call us heroes and superstars, but we're not like the men and women in the military and the Army, Navy, and Air Force and Marines and National Guard. Those guys go to work every day, just like the police and firemen, knowing that they have to be the first responders. They got to be there to save lives. We do this, number one, to win a race. We do it because we love it, and we do it to entertain the fans and sell products. That's what it's all about. But we also know what's out there, and it can get ugly. But we do it because we love it. You know what I'm saying? We're like a fireman. We'll jump through a burning window. You know what I mean? To hear the cheer of the crowd. A little pathetic. Firemen have to do it. Military have to do it. We don't. We do it because we love it, but they love what they do, and that's saving lives. We do it to put on a show. And every now and then we need our own life saved. Hell, I've lasted over 4 decades, and like in any sport, somebody can get hurt. This sport of NHRA, I believe, is a safe sport.
Let me ask you, I'm curious, because I think in my world, there's so much talk of system, you know, having your process that you follow all the time. Now, you don't have enough time in our short conversation today. You know, we're going to be under an hour. We don't have enough time to explain everything that has to happen when you sit in the cockpit. But give people a broad overview of how you go down the checklist of getting everything done right before you hit the gas, before the Christmas tree comes down. Give people a sense of that. There's a lot of steps, isn't there?
You've heard of a golfer that loses his swing. You've got to be in the zone. You got to go in there when you're pulling up to put on that first bulb, to pre-stage, then stage, and then react to the amber. You don't want to wait for green or you're late. The bottom line is you go into a zone where you don't think about nothing. You take all the fear out of it. Your deal is to focus on that light, know that car's straight, know that you got to hit that throttle on time, and you got to make magic. You got to believe in yourself. You got to believe in your team, and that's how you get the job done. I've got almost 150 wins. I've got 16 championships myself, 18 as a team owner, but I'm trained. I've always joked I'm trained like a monkey. You know what I mean? You could train a monkey to drive this hot rod if he did it for 4 decades. And I don't know if he could give a good interview as me, but bottom line, you train yourself to do this thing. And that's really hard to explain what goes through you, but you go into a zone and you don't think, you blank everything else out. The cheer of the crowd, everything, until you get to that interview at the other end.
John, let me take you back in time a little bit, because it's one thing to have nearly 4 decades of experience and be at the top of the game, but it's another thing to be starting out. I mean, you just didn't walk out there and going 330 miles an hour in 4 seconds. There was a certain progression to get you where you are today. Give me maybe some story early on when you first, even your start, that experience of getting to the point where you were really competing at the upper levels. It must have been quite an education to start to move up the ladder, so to speak.
It was starvation. It was hawking everything I had. It was leaving my family behind for months, sometimes driving the 18-wheeler to get to the next race. I tell people, don't do it because you want to be famous. Don't do it because you want to be rich. You know, there maybe a few will make it, but the majority don't. But if you do it out of love and a passion for speed, then it all makes sense why you do it. But it has fed my family. It put my kids through college. Now my whole family works in my business. Nobody works on the outside. My granddaughter Autumn is 12 years old. She's driving a junior dragster. And my 2 grandsons, they'll either be hockey players or maybe they'll be drag racers. My daughter married Graham Rahal. He's an IndyCar driver. We're here for the Indy 500 this weekend. Who knows where the future goes? We give them opportunities, get them an education, get them through college. You know what I'm saying? And like my girls, and that's what we do. But let me tell you something. A lot of burn centers I've been in. I've been on fire from here to Australia. But I've crossed America. I know America only by the interstates. I haven't seen half the cities. You know what I'm saying? You go into town, you do a race, you're back on the interstate. Now I'm back on an airplane. My team travels with, I think, 10 or 12, 18-wheelers with freight liners pulling them. And they live on the road. I've got 125 employees or close to it, 122, and they live it. Got shops in California and shops in Indy, and we build our own cars, build our own engines, paint our own cars. We do a little bit of everything. It's a great life. I can't complain.
You know, John, you mentioned the fire a moment ago, and you made the line about I've been on fire from Australia to here. You're going to be the only person on my podcast, and I've done over 500 episodes. The first person, probably the only person I'm going to ask this question, which is, when you're on fire, what is the first thing that you've trained yourself to do when you're on fire?
Well, first thing you train yourself to do is don't scream, don't open your mouth, don't suck in like, oh my God, because you're inhaling and you'll suck fire right down your throat. I got burnt years ago because I went into panic in my early days, 40 years ago, inhaled a lot of smoke, and I talk hoarse to this day. I think it was because of the fire, or maybe just because I talk too much. The bottom line on it is that you go into fight mode. You know what you have to do. You know, you don't hit your parachutes right away because the fire will burn them off. You've got to wait for the fire to burn down, because usually it's a fuel explosion or oil, and it'll usually burn off. But if the body catches on fire, then you got to run away freight train. Now you got to get on the fire bottles. It'll probably burn your chutes off, and then you got to get this thing stopped because you're running out of ground real fast. At over 330 miles an hour, these things cover ground like you can't even imagine. On the brakes, not to burn the brakes out. Car gets hopping on you, you got to let loose of the brake, and that's hard to do under the fear of pressure. But you got to blank out that fear. But probably as much experience as I have, the fear is still there. You never get rid of it. You just know how to go into fight mode, and that's what you do to protect yourself.
You know, John, I've seen some accounts of your career early on. Maybe this would be back in the 70s and 80s, where some peers, you know, they didn't necessarily give the best accounting of you. They would perhaps say things, and they weren't as complimentary to you, and perhaps you weren't having the success then. What kept you going when you weren't winning early on?
Well, first of all, I'm the kind of guy, I don't let someone give me their opinion and direct me in the road of life. I do what I do. They only rekindled the fire if I was down, because I burned a car to the ground at Memphis, and I got out in the interview and said I saw Elvis at 1,000 foot. Hell, I got more newspaper out of being on fire and talking about Elvis than winning the race. and people, they love it. But if the competition don't like it, well, they were able to beat me up for the first 10 years. And then I beat them up for about 20.
You got them in the long run, huh? You've got more races, more victories than anybody, right?
Yeah, But I don't look back on that. Now they're beating me up real good, but I'm going to turn it around. It goes through the goods and bads, the highs and lows. But no, I just, if someone aggravates me, it just makes me work harder. That's the way my dad and mom taught me. I fight for what I want. I fight for my family. And Old Glory, the American flag. We got to fix this, the greatest country in the world.
You mentioned your mom and dad. Let me let you go back even farther, because I've seen accounting on your background, and there's some interesting personal history, especially your personal physical history overcoming polio. Why don't you speak to that? Because as a young person, that's a really tough thing. Kids are going to be tough on you, but you, again, the persistence seems to be right there with you at a very early age.
Born in 1949. The vaccine for polio didn't even come out till the 50s. I think I got it when I was first starting to walk, between 1 and 2 years old, and then I quit walking. They thought I had spinal meningitis, and they took me to a doctor. I was up in the logging camps of Oregon, and they said, no, this guy's got polio. There was no cure then. Scalding hot baths with your legs underwater to get stimulation. And I went through that, and it was rough on my family. I don't even remember it. I was too small. They're doing a book on me now, and they tell about all that story. A lot of it was from my brother that witnessed it and what I went through. But, part of life, you take what's thrown at you, and you keep fighting. So now they're growing up. My mom was a cook. My dad was a truck driver. I was just a crazy kid wanting to play football, wear a helmet, and hear the cheer of the crowd and have the camaraderie of a team. And I got that in drag racing, still wear a helmet, still hear the cheer of the crowd, and still got the camaraderie of a team. Life couldn't get better.
John, why has this passion that you're giving on this call, why do we not see this across America, frankly, other countries? What's happened today? What's happened to people today where they can't get excited? They can't have the passion. You're 68 years young. You sound like a teenager. What is wrong with society as a whole? How did we miss out on being, keeping that passion that you've got alive? What are we missing out on?
Well, I know a lot of people, my daughters, my son-in-law, my teammates, my employees, they've all got passion. And so do all the other guys and gals out there on the interstates running the roads with these 18-wheelers, going to these races. There's a lot of passion worldwide, but there's a lot of anger out there, and I don't know why. I know I have it some days, and I have to sit down and talk to myself and tell myself to straighten up. Life's good. A good Lord put us on this earth, and we got to work hard, take care of our families, and try to be good people. That's what I try to do. But some days I even have problems. Some people get stuck in the mud for a long time. I don't allow it. I talk my way out.
You mentioned that you're going to the gym in a few minutes. When will you stop? Is there any physical limitation that you see on yourself in the near future?
Well, I'm not kidding myself. Father Time's chasing me, or I'm chasing it. But bottom line, if I don't go to the gym, if I miss the gym, honestly, 3 days in a row, I go every other day. Some days I'll go 5 days in a row. Depends on my schedule. But my doctor said you'll never recover, from being in that hospital, for almost 2 months. My body lost a lot of its memory. And you train yourself. If you were young, if you're 30, you pop right back. I was 58, going on 60, 56, whatever age I was when I crashed. But bottom line, I'll never recover. So if I don't keep going to the gym, exercising, and doing everything I need to do, weightlifting, and trust me, I don't have no body of the Hulk. I ain't Superman, but I keep my body's memory. I keep the motion going. I know guys half my age can't touch their toes. You know what I'm saying? And I make sure that I can touch the ground every day. I don't want to just touch my toes. I want to know that I'm giving everything I can at my age, and it's tiring. There's some days when I'm done in a gym workout after 2 hours, I'll sit there for 30 minutes because it's like, man, just getting up's a job. But I love it. I keep my body in good shape. I keep my mind right, and I dream. And you get that energy up, get that blood pressure going, get off that couch, America. Don't sit there. Don't say you're old and use it for an excuse. Get up and go to work. And I know it's tough because I've had days that I remember being in the hospital crying and telling my wife, I can't do this. This is impossible. She goes, I know John Forrest better than that. I know you. Keep going. And I worked my way through it. And I ain't going back. So I'm going to go till I drop. Hopefully It won't be in a rocking chair, even though that's a pretty good idea some days. It'll probably be on a racetrack somewhere in America.
You know, you mismentioned dreaming. So with all this success that you've got under your belt, 4 decades of success, what do you dream about these days?
Look, I own 2 car museums. I got a big old house. I've got a place in Lake Tahoe.
That's not the most important stuff to you, though, is it?
No, none of it matters. It's nice to be able to get my family together and have a place for them to go and take a vacation at Christmas. I got sports cars that I don't even license, and motorcycles. Don't have time to drive them. I drive my Chevrolet every day, my pickup truck. I love it. It's got my music in it. I still listen to the Beach Boys and country, and that's the world I live in. I wake up to go racing. That's what I do. And a lot of guys say, oh man, we're on a 4 races in a row. That's going to be a real, backbreaker. I love it because I get into the mode of fight, and I don't like to get out of it. I like to keep training, keep running, keep racing. I do it because I ain't no different than I ain't nothing special. I'm no different than NASCAR or IndyCar or any kind of racing, motorcycle racing. I'm just a guy that loves what I do, and I'm very lucky, very fortunate, and I've done it well. And I'm going to keep doing it well. And the day I can't, then maybe I got to get out of the seat, but not today.
John, it's an inspiring story. I mean, I'm a self-made entrepreneur myself, but I love your story. I mean, you've got a few years on me, but it's one of those things where when you hear someone that's ahead of you and they're nowhere close to giving in or quitting or stopping, it's a motivating thing. And I think that it's motivating. And I think it's once you get to the point where you're at and you can't let go of the fight, maybe that is the feeling that keeps every entrepreneur alive and dreaming, just that I'm going to keep doing it. That's that thrill.
We're given the opportunity living in America, the greatest country in the world. I believe that even though it's got all its problems, it's still the greatest. Okay. And we all have to do our part. We got to get up every day and go to work. We've got to entertain people in all walks of life. Whatever you do in a job, you have a reason. We do it for our families and we do it for love. We have men and women in the military that are overseas fighting and giving their lives. And we got nothing to complain about. They're protecting us. The least we can do is support them and build this country back to what it needs to be. It's still the greatest in the world, but it can be a whole lot better, and I'm going to keep fighting for it. I'm looking across at the American flag right out in front of my building. I got the tallest flagpole the city had let me have, and I have to put a new flag on it twice a year. I got them out at my shop in California, American flag. People say, why do you spend that kind of money? Are you kidding me? To let everybody know that I'm an American, and I'm proud of it. And we're a mixture of all kinds of people, and that's what makes us great. Only God knows where it's going to go, but I'm going to keep trying.
John, I wish you the best of luck. And I tell you, I think you've motivated me, and I'm sure you've motivated many in my audience that have not seen an NHRA funny car race in person to probably go find one now. I think everyone's going to go find John Force and let's see him ride.
Turn on your TVs. We're on Fox Sports. You can watch us every Sunday. And on Saturday and Friday qualifying, a lot of the great TV produced in-house at NHRA drag racing, Mellow Yellow drag racing. Hey, we're P.T. Barnum. We don't even have elephants, but P.T. Barnum don't have elephants no more. We're the greatest show on earth. Come see us or watch us on Fox, and you'll be entertained. The ground will shake when you stand there on the starting line, and the rumble and the noise, and bring the families. They'll love it. We're all across America, 24 national events. I'll just say thank you for your show. You give a great interview. I love it. And yet you ask a lot of great questions. Like you said, you're building your own story. And anytime you need me, all you got to do is call my PR. They'll find me somewhere. Want to be on your show.
Thanks, John. I appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
I see a time when those awake will understand how to make money in up, down, and surprise markets. Whether new trader or experienced, college student or financial advisor, protecting against a crash or just trying to make a lot of money, trend following offers everyone an answer in uncertain times. To get started immediately, send me an email, michael@covel.com. I will send you the right trend following steps to take along with my free video. But if you want to buy and hold, trust the government and trust Wall Street, this is absolutely not for you.